This is a beginning point. This is the beginning of the rest of my life. I got the meaning, and I got to write it down, because I don't want to forget it.
Just win, baby.
Welcome back to the Gold Jacket Podcast. We're proudly sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. They truly have it all. Daily, weekly, season-long best ball tournaments happening 365 days a year. Plus, you can play their pick and prop games. You get 5 picks right. You can win 20 times your money. Make sure you take advantage of the promo code UNDROPPABLES when you sign up, and you can double your initial deposit by up to $100. I'm your host, Gymnastic. I should call myself Jim Lagstick, but you can find me on Twitter at GoldJacketQBs. I'm joined as always by the host of the show, Connor Donald. You can see him everywhere, but find him on Twitter at Connor10. That's TEN, not the ones and the zeros. Proud members of the Undroppables. We've had a lot of hiccups on my end because, well, you know, if you fucking follow the show, man. But hopefully you can find us on the Undroppables, on the undroppables.com, at the Undroppables on Twitter, and the Undroppables on YouTube. Tonight we're wrapping up 13th week. Oh my God, this is insane. You're going for the last week of your fantasy season. You're on the fringe in a couple of spots like me. Maybe you got hit by injury bugs. You're fucking bugging some league mates for some awesome RBs. Maybe you're like rolling in number one. We'll see it. But week 14, this is it, I guess. This is it. You're pushing your chips into the table and you're getting ready for the playoffs. Connor, what's happening first, though, before we get into all this bullshit?
Yeah, sorry we missed last week. We did have some major technical difficulties trying to get this going, so we ended up just not even having a show. Frustration got the better of us, but we're back this week. This week, we're leading you into the playoffs. I'm good, though. I'm good. I'm getting over a cold that my son passed on to me. Daycare, God, the greatest blessing and curse that exists in the goddamn world is daycare. But otherwise, let's dive right into it. We got a lot to talk about, and we want to get people in and out in less than an hour. So let's talk about the stories. Lamar Jackson, he has a PCL injury. He is likely to miss anywhere from 1 to 3 games, probably more than likely the lesser and be 1 game, which is a good thing. If it's more than 1 game, that leads into your playoff run, or your playoffs, which is really dangerous. So, I mean, at this point, like, Huntley's great. Like, Huntley's really good. Huntley steps in and he's pretty much Lamar Jackson 2.0 minus a couple fantasy points a week. And he targets the same people. It's still a run first offense and all that. Jim, does anything really change for you in this regard? The wide receivers are pretty much unstartable, almost unmanageable at this point. And Mark Andrews is Mark Andrews, and then the Russian attack is a Russian attack. It's like 5 running backs who you never know who to start or who's going to do what. Is there anything you want to add on the Lamar Jackson injury other than hopefully it's just 1 week?
Yeah, hopefully it's just 1 week because, listen, if you got Huntley, if you're picking him up on the waivers, like, I just flipped him for a 23 third. I figured that was pretty good value. I've never started him except for a few spots. I don't even own Lamar Jackson. I don't need him. Extra guys shooting the shit. Yeah, man. Yeah, I got Huntley as my goal QB. If you want to just jump ahead real quick, and it's basically because of those points you put. Like, they don't really have to change the game plan. He's super efficient. Doesn't really do much though with other wide receivers, but does enough with his legs too. You know what I mean? And he's going up against a defense that is allow him to eventually bust one loose He can run it in from 2 yards out like we saw. He can lead a 91-yard drive. We saw that. He can come in and do enough to lead this offense. I mean, was it a nice win? No, it was an ugly fucking win, but it was a win. But I've seen enough of the fancy aspect from Huntley. Yeah, if you're a Lamar Jackson owner, fuck, you're hoping it's 1 week, man. Because if it's more than one, then you're really scary looking into your playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen Huntley. He's he can be like a middle of the pack RB or a QB2. But that's really, I mean, we saw him reach the QB1 stature last season against Green Bay in that one game where he put up 36 fantasy points and people were loving him. But that's really it. Otherwise, it's like anywhere between like 10 to 20 points. And in most cases, he's almost unstartable. But in an extreme pinch, he might just do enough for you as a quarterback. But otherwise, really not necessarily somebody you want. And you're really hoping as a Lamar Jackson manager that it's just 1 week, because those playoffs are right around the corner. And if you're a Lamar Jackson manager, odds are most Lamar Jackson managers are a team proudly in the playoffs right now. So Jimmy G, done for the fantasy season. He is likely going to be back in time for the playoffs or some aspect of the playoffs in real life. But this is a dynasty fantasy football show. How much fab would you be spending on Brock Purdy which he should likely be available on your waiver wires in dynasty leagues? And then we'll touch on Jimmy G, because I know in a group chat we talked about Jimmy G a little bit and you think there's a little bit of value there. So we'll talk about Jimmy G more. But first, Brock Purdy, how much would you put on him, knowing that most people probably have like the change in their pocket left, like nickels and dimes?
See, now this is actually why I end up saving normally a lot. Like, I'm pretty frugal when it comes to my early fab bidding in the season, and I'll admit I lose out on some prime candidates, but I do dollar bin shop, and it's pretty efficient. But this is usually the reason why I keep a lot of fab. I would put $1 more than the highest bid that could possibly outbid me if I had my fab. Like right now, I'm sitting on like $1,000 or $500 or like 99% of my max fab in a lot of leagues. I just am, because I realized early I'm not going to really compete because I've had big injuries derail early, or I've had enough depth where I would keep rolling. I didn't have to pick up those waiver wire guys. It didn't really affect me. I haven't been hit by those injuries. If I did, I had a couple guys to move up into it in those spots already. But I've been hit with injuries like Lamar Jackson, Jimmy G, one team by both those. So I got $900 out of 1,000 fab. I'm gonna grab both those guys. I'm gonna grab Bryson Perkins if he's somehow available. I'm gonna grab Brock Purdy if he's available. I'm gonna grab Tyler Huntley if he's still available, and just $1 more than the highest bidder in my league. And guess what? Like the most is 155. I'm getting all three. It'll be no problem. And then I'll flip whoever I'm going to start for a pick going in next year. I mean, I don't care what's a third round pick. You know what I mean, better than the $155 fab I just spent on Tyler Huntley. Cool.
Agreed. I like that point. Now, you made a point in a group chat and we've been discussing about Jimmy G. You think there's a value there? You think there's a value to be had. If you are a Jimmy G manager, what would your asking price be for Jimmy G? What are you willing to move Jimmy G for? Are you willing to move Jimmy G at this point, or do you want to wait and see what next year brings?
I want to hold him personally. I want to hold him, see how he's progressing. Unless like I'm getting, I don't know. Unless like I'm getting
I think a second's good. If you get a second, I'm taking that and running.
Yeah, I would trade him for a second, but I'm more looking now. Like if I was going to be trading Jimmy G now, I'd probably be looking for like I got hit with another injury and trying to fill that gap. Like the league I'm with Kenny Walker. If I had Jimmy G there too, I'd probably be trying to trade him for just like a backup running back that could fill the void right now. You know, Jamal Williams style.
Listen, I'd be willing to move Jimmy G for a second in a heartbeat, but I mean, there's talk like he's clearly coming back next year. There's clearly some teams who are probably going to lose out on the QB in the draft. They're going to lose out on the QB. There's not really so much a bit more in free agency.
To still be in the league. I don't even think San Francisco is going to get rid of him, to be honest with you. Let's be honest. Is Trey Lance really the guy?
Should they?
I don't think they should.
He was kept around this year for a reason.
And put him in a goddamn good position to fucking make a strong Super Bowl push.
You at this point, you're just uncertain with Trey Lance. You saw very little from him. Then you saw whatever you saw from him, and then he got hurt. Like, what do you got from this guy? This guy's going to go into year 3, and you really don't know what you got in him. So is he good? Is Jimmy G going to be back? If Jimmy G is going to be back, that spells a disaster for the people who've invested significantly in Trey Lance. Like, San Francisco has to be willing to move on and bring in the Trevor Simeons of the world, the Nick Foles of the world as the backup to say, you're our guy. If you bring Jimmy G back, that's like Carson Wentz and Nick Foles in Philadelphia type situation. Like, you do not want that. That is a mind-bending situation for your young quarterback who you spent multiple first-round picks to move up and get this first round, this pick. You need to be willing to say, okay, at the end of this year, see you later, Jimmy G, go where you got to go.
Would you, though? I mean, let's be honest. With the 49ers window, it's really this year, next year.
It's tight. It's tight.
And then that's it. Are you getting rid of the guy that has clearly stepped up and given you at least a shot at a strong playoff push? I mean, he's filled in for you every time you fucking asked him.
Agree. Listen, I completely agree. But at the end of the day, Jimmy G likely has a good chance of getting more money than San Francisco's going to want to offer. And at this point, you have to buy either. I think I'd be
trying to trade Trey Lance and picking up another.
But like you have to. Okay, so you have to make the decision. Are you in on Lance or are you out on Lance as San Francisco? And it's so difficult to gauge where they're going to be. But you kind of got to figure it out. And at this point, if say, Jim, like you said, you want to trade the guy, what is he worth? You've pretty much invested, 3 first-rounders to get this guy? And he is probably not even going to draw you a first-rounder back. No team. There was always a lot of question marks from a lot of teams about him, and that's why there's a big reason why San Francisco was all over him and probably was one of the few teams that was going to get him no matter what the circumstance ended up being. So definitely something interesting. Definitely something we're going to hit on in the offseason. Hayden Hurst, friend of the show, favorite of the show, seems likely to miss at least a minimum 1 game with a calf injury. What tight end at the bottom of the barrel are you digging for this week, Jim? I know you don't like tight ends, but I have to ask.
Cade Otton.
Oh, that's fun. Maybe for the playoffs, but when we get to my Fools and Golden Fool's Gold, we'll talk about Cade Otton. But
yeah, but here's where you got to end up taking him. You got to grab him now. He's still available. Coming out with that last minute drive, last 5-minute push or whatever. He gets the first touchdown. Rashad White with the go ahead. Again, a veteran quarterback has been looking to on crucial situations, 2-minute drives, 4-minute drives, third down situations. Is Tom Brady. If you're going to call him the GOAT, okay, he's the GOAT. I believe it. Right? I'm calling him the GOAT. Everyone wants to call him the GOAT. If I liked Pat Freiermuth because Ben Roethlisberger was going to him in the same situations, shouldn't I like Cade Otton for the exact same situation? Like, he's got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on that team and Julio Jones, and he was still looking at Cade Otton in some like fucking crucial situations there. So I don't know. He's a guy. Now, is he going to be giving you, the dirty business this week, or is he going to give you the Dawson Knoxer fucking donut? But that's beside the point. What he is going to do is be a nice little ad for the playoff push. I'm not sure if Hayden Hurst, if you got him, is going to only be missing the 1 week. Are you going to play him on the bounce back in your crucial playoff first round? I'm not. We'll see.
Probably not. I mean, you know me. I like Juwan Johnson. I'm still in on Juwan Johnson if he's available anywheres, or if people are frustrated with him. He seems to be a guy that Andy Dalton likes to go in red zone situations if he wants to get a touchdown. I mean, otherwise, who you're digging deep. If Daniel Bellinger was dropped and is available, maybe take a look at Daniel Bellinger. It's ugly. Jelani Woods has started to look better in Indy. He's starting to come on a little bit. But I mean, you at this point, as a Hayden Hurst manager, you probably pushed him to the back of the pile and you really waited in drafting him, or your tight end situation is very bleak if Hayden Hurst was your number one. So you would probably really hope that it's only one game that he's going to miss, that this is a strain or whatever, and it's going to work itself out and he's going to be available for you in the first round of the playoffs. Otherwise, you're going to have to dig really deep into these tight ends and play some super friendly matchups.
If you are a team without a first round bye in the playoffs, or a team vying for a first round bye in the playoffs this week, what is a tight end you'd be willing to trade for? And what kind of offers would you be throwing up?
It's tight end though. Like I wouldn't go first. Like it would have to be a second. And like you'd have to be, oh man. Oof. I'm just looking at like rankings and just trying to figure out like who has an opportunity. Gerald Everett's been bad. Like I don't even know if he's worth going after. Like if you can do a third for Gerald Everett and take a flyer and pray, okay. Conklin's been bad. Like Njoku's back, but Watson, it looks like there's gonna be a bit of a warming period there. Like some time's gonna take before that offense really builds. It showed last week. Evan Ingram intrigues me. I'd probably be willing to go in on Evan Ingram a little more than other tight ends. If you're going for that first round bye, if you really want to get in, like you got to look at a guy like that. You got to look at a guy and you got to be willing to, I don't know if I'd throw a second, but like maybe a player that's equivalent to a second. But Evan Ingram's someone who sticks out to me. Dalton Schultz in a Dallas offense that's really heating up, one of the highest scoring since Dak Prescott's come back. Guys like that come out to me, but Dalton Schultz is probably worth like the second. You probably have to give up the second or more, because Dalton Schultz managers were truthers, were guys who were really in on Dalton Schultz. But those are names that I think of. Like you got to look for guys like that who may be cheaper than their original value or are doing a lot better than they thought, but are kind of flying under the radar. So
love it.
Lastly, Matt Stafford dumped for the season. It
fucking
seems to
bullshit.
Would you buy, sell, or hold on Matthew Stafford for next season? Because hear me out. The thing was, there was an elbow injury. There was issues with the elbow, and it seems like it affected him a lot more. Now there's the back issues. Would you buy that there's a bounce back, especially knowing that he is there for 4 years? Like at least, like I think it's a minimum. We looked at the contract 2 weeks ago. I think it's like 4 years minimum that he's going to be there. This offense is going to look almost identical to what it did. They have no first round picks. They have no second round picks. They have no third round picks, whatever it is. It's crazy. They have no picks. This is the team. They're still going to be all in next year. They folded this year, but they're going to be all in next year. What are your thoughts on Matthew Stafford? Buy, sell, hold, and value, please.
Fuck, man. I think you got to be fucking shopping him in the offseason, plain and simple. Now, whether or not, again, I understand he's going to be there, and he's going to be there with pretty much the same team. But as you just highlighted there, no first rounds, no second rounds for like a couple years. We could see him on the apex curve now on the decline, right? Like they got to the Super Bowl, gave you the Super Bowl, and now are literally crashing. Now, I'm not taking anything away from him, but he is a guy that I'd be trying to shop in the off season. I understand that the elbow is Tommy John's really fucks with you. But it's super flex, man. Like, you can get caught holding the bag with a quarterback. Like, do you want to, like, you get, I'm not calling him Baker, but you can get hit with a Baker.
I'm saying talk to Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers manager right now. They were flying high last year, and Tom Brady, I think Tom Brady, what is like 4 top 12 finishes? I think he's in my fool's gold conversation. Aaron Rodgers is like 2 top 12 finishes this year. Like,
yeah, like the decline comes fast. You know what I mean? And like now the back issues too, and like we know where that's coming from. Fuck you, Detroit. You broke the guy's fucking back.
My thing with Matthew Stafford is like, okay, he's tough. He's tough as nails. The guy's playing through injuries. He's playing through everything. But the guy's like 33, 34 years old. Like, at this point in his career, eventually you can only play through so much, and then you have to start to consider life after football and what can you play through. And I think this is one of those years where he started to, like, these are injuries he might have been able to play through in previous years, or he probably played through in Detroit, and he's not willing to sacrifice and play through them now.
You can't sell him now, though. You got to wait until like the reports of like he's looking good in training camp. And then you gotta sell.
But what do you think on the from a sell perspective? What would the value?
Second in a player?
I like it.
That's true. That is very true, man.
Yeah, but Abe says, don't downplay the fact his wife had a brain tumor and that might affect if he wants to continue playing. Definitely true. Like, while some of these people, like even Aaron Rodgers, are locked into
in a downward player right now. That's like on that. Well, can go up, but has ill perceived value.
Yeah, you know and I mean,
Gabe Davis would be a good one.
These guys like Aaron Rodgers have massive contracts, but at any point they can retire and just call it a career. And they can void their guarantees or figure out a way to get a payout from the team other than the guarantees. Like, there's ways around this stuff. So it's very difficult to gauge what's going to happen with Matthew Stafford, very difficult to gauge what will happen with Aaron Rodgers. And these are people we'll talk about in the offseason. But yeah, I think at this point you're in a hold-in spot. And as soon as like things are clearing up, his like you said, he's showing up to camp. He's throwing in camp. His back's good. His elbow's clearing up, like things like that. That's when, like, you're never going to – the first-round value of Matthew Stafford that was in this offseason will not return. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to return. And if you really hold to the point, like, it would be mid to late next season that you're holding to, and that value will return. And at that point, I don't know if it's worth it, or I don't know if it's been worth it for your roster to hold that long on this guy. Like, if you are able to go like high end 2, like you said, high end 2, a player somebody's ready to give it, like a la Paris Campbell of this year. Find a guy who somebody's willing to give up on that might boom a bit with the right situation, with the right quarterback, and that high end 2, and you can say, see you later, Matthew Stafford, with ease. Like, that's the type of return you're probably looking at now, and I would definitely agree with. You're not getting Paris Campbell now, but
no. But
like Paris Campbell of the offseason was the one to look at. But now let's move into our player to buy and sell. I was a little lazy. I took the same ones that I talked about with me and you last week when we weren't even on the air. But I would be starting to check in on players who are done for the season, especially with teams that are competing. You may be able to get values out of Rashad Bateman's, Breece Hall's, Cooper Kupp's, Wan'Dale Robinson's, Kyle Pitts of the world. Like, I had a guy approach me. I used this example last week about Cooper Kupp. I would never take this deal, but he asked, how about a first and Brandon Ayuk for Cooper Kupp? Cooper Kupp's, I think Brandon Ayuk's super underrated still, to the fact, like, I think Brandon Ayuk alone is worth a first.
Pancakes.
Like, but those are the types of deals. Like, there are people prepared to sell Cooper Kupp at a first round or a first round plus a little value when this guy was like a 2 times, 3 times first type of value last offseason. So like look at him, look at Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson drafted in the first round. He's got the draft capital. He's got that 5th-year option. This is a guy who was drafted by the New York Giants in the first round. He's going to be around. I think he's going to be around. He was showing some potential. He struggled with injuries. He could be a Paris Campbell example. He could be one of those guys. How about a high-end 2 and Wan'Dale Robinson for Matthew Stafford? Brees Hall, he's going to be a little bit more expensive, I think, especially with the condition of running backs this season. But Rashad Bateman, Kyle Pitts, we talked about him in prior weeks. He's not a 3 times first value. I don't think he's a 2 times first value anymore. But there's going to be some people who think that. But if you got someone who's at a 1 times first plus something, maybe you could get a deal done like that. So start talking to the teams competing that need pieces, that need assets. See what you can do. See what you can wheel and deal with the guys who are bringing them no value in their run to win something. Who do you got for player to buy, Jim?
Well, my player to buy, really want to echo what you have to say now. Exactly what you said. Like, go out, check out your leagues now, depending on the situation. I'm in a few leagues where I'm competing where I lost guys like Kenneth Walker, where I'm scrambling to fill the void, possibly overpaying for some RBs. And actually, and then there's other leagues where I'm really falling behind, and I've gladly saw this opportunity to trade away like guys like Tyler Huntley and Julio Jones for seconds and thirds next year to competing teams just for that desperate playoff push. And speaking of that, actually, that team that I was aforementioned talking about losing Kenneth Walker, I got a trade coming in across the wire. Now, I'm not going to accept this, but I should probably tweak it. Geno Smith, Gabe Davis in the first for Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah,
Connor,
I wouldn't take it.
I would never take.
I think at this point, Christian McCaffrey's a 1 times plus a bit first value, not a
would you
multiple
trade Geno Smith and Gabe Davis?
If you're in it, if you think you're in it, you have a chance. You're on the fringes. You're looking to compete and go in. I think Christian McCaffrey can be a difference maker. We have talked about it though, the cannibalization of that offense and the situation. Like you could buy into Christian McCaffrey and he could end up putting up 8 points in a playoff game week, and then once you're eliminated, he could drop 20 or 30. Like the cannibalization
Let me name
has to be
some
considered.
other running backs. Would you rather go after a Brian Robinson in a dynasty?
Yeah. Brian Robinson works. He's showing that he's got a job there. He's fully capable of keeping it. He's got a good opportunity there. I'd look at Brian Robinson. I'd even look at Antonio Gibson if you're really in a pinch. Like those two guys.
I mean, it doesn't help me this
week,
week, but it helps me in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Like at this point, you're looking at the playoffs. You're looking at maybe trying to get a guy who's going to be in next week and the playoffs and beyond that you can be confident in. But yeah, I definitely look at them. Let me pull up running backs here. Ramondre's probably rich. Somebody might be willing to move on Miles Sanders. Like if you're in there, Miles Sanders, he's ERB 13 right now. He's somebody.
That feels gross.
It feels gross, but he's getting touchdowns. He's getting something he hasn't been getting in the past. He's giving you opportunity. I think he's up to 8 touchdowns on the year.
You know the guy who I really want if I'm competing and I just lost a running back, and I mean, this is a perfect segue, is Josh Jacobs. So for me, that's the guy I think I'm competing. I'm number 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the guy that I think that I'm trying to buy, and he's the guy I'm trying to buy heavy and a little bit willing to overpay. But speaking of segues,
because I got him as my player to sell. And that for that reason, you're willing to overpay because you're willing to take advantage of an opportunity to be a guy that goes out and wins the league this year, could win the league next year. We don't know what situation he's going to be next year. But Jacobs has never averaged more than 16 points per game or been anything more than the RB12 by a per game average perspective. This year, he has exploded thanks to the number one opportunity share among running backs at nearly 84%. 84% of touches in that backfield, passing or rushing. He ranks top 10 across almost every key productivity category. He's on pace to obliterate, like not just a little bit, obliterate all receiving bests, touchdown bests, carries, yards, everything. Next year, he's 25 years old. He's a free agent running back in a super busy running back market and draft class. Will he end up in a similar situation? I think he has to end up back in this situation to get this type of work again. Josh McDaniels comes from the Belichick tree, that offense that uses multiple running backs or focuses in on one running back. Look at this, focusing in on one running back, using him, burying him in the ground with usage. I don't think it's worth it. But if you are not competing, now is a chance to definitely cash in at a 2 times first value or 1 times first and 1 times second value. I think it's time to cash in and get rid of him because we do not know the circumstance or the situation he's going to be in next year. They did not exercise his option for a reason. I do not think this is going to be a team that's going to go out there and pay him $12 to $15 million if they weren't willing to exercise that 5th-year option this year. So that's my reason to sell on Jacobs. But if you're a competing team and somebody's willing to sell at and you're willing to buy at a 1 times first and a 1 times second type of value circumstance, by all means. But if you are holding him, you're out of the playoffs, you don't have much of a chance, or you have a chance at a playoff spot, but you know you're going to get obliterated as soon as you get in, you should probably move on. You ain't getting the bag this year.
I feel like that's a personal shot at me because the person that I have to sell is Jamal Williams, man, and for a lot of the same reasons that you just said about Josh Jacobs, except Jamal Williams is going to be 28 next year, and he's got a extremely fucking large and efficient share in the red zone in the 5-yard, specifically in the 5-yard line. But he's a free agent. He's going to be 28 next year. So he's a guy that, if you're maybe sitting in that 6th spot in the playoffs, thinking that you're gonna, roll over the number 1 seed, but probably not, or a number 2 seed, but you're probably not going to. He's a guy that you should probably just trade. He's a guy you should probably just trade up for some other pieces to put your dynasty going forward. But that's it, because you don't know what's going to happen with him next year.
I like it. Thanks for the advice, Jim. If you can't, if you haven't dialed into the conversation that has been rolling throughout this episode, Jim is trying to get Jamal Williams for me in a team where he is a fringe potential playoff team, and I am in 4th place, and I would need a lot of situations to go against me in order to completely fall off the face of the earth and fall into the playoff stuff. But yes, I feel like the player to buy and sell jabs were directed directly to me. This is not helping our negotiations. He said, no picks allowed. Well, let me tell you, that 1st-round pick is looking pretty good in 2023. But let's move to the Golden Fool's Gold part of the show. We're not going to give you, well, maybe we might give you some chalk plays, but we're trying not to give you the chalk plays. We're trying to give you guys that you probably aren't expecting to pop into the top 12 or the top 12 quarterbacks, tight ends, top 24 from a running back and wide receiver perspective. We're hoping top 12 altogether. And then we're looking at guys who are going to bust, who you're likely going to play and say, screw this guy, I'm not going to listen to him, but they likely will bust, and they likely won't end up in the top, as the top 12 running back or tight end or top 24 wide receiver or running back. So let's dive into it. Quarterback, gold, I got Jared Goff up against Minnesota. Mac Jones and Mike White. They have two things in common aside from being AFC East starting quarterbacks now, and that is that they have put up 25 plus fantasy points against the Minnesota Vikings. They cap off 4 straight 23 plus point quarterback performances, and 6 of the last 7 where the Minnesota Vikings have allowed 23 plus points to the position. Goff has been hot and cold, but has delivered 5 games over 20, including 2 straight. He's thrown 26 plus times in all games this season and delivered multiple touchdowns on 6 occasions. This is a juicy, juicy matchup for Jared Goff. You would be remiss not to play him, especially with some questionable buys or some buys that may be causing you some grief. Fool's gold. I got Tom Brady up against San Francisco 49ers. Brady pulled off a humongous comeback on Monday night that had him squeak into the top 12 of quarterbacks, but barring the comeback, that wasn't going to happen. And it was only the 3rd time this season Tom Brady has managed to squeak into the top 12. San Fran is one of the best defenses in the league all around, and only 2 QBs have managed 25 plus on them. Mariota in a week where there was a ton of injuries on the defense, and Patrick Mahomes. And that's, well, because it's Patrick Mahomes. And a third, Tua managed 20 plus, trying to salvage a comeback last week. Only 3 have thrown for 250 plus, and only 4 have had 2 plus touchdowns against this defense, with 3 being the most touchdowns that quarterback got. Before Tua last week, their last multi-touchdown game allowed to a quarterback was Patrick Mahomes in week 7. Feel like this is going to be a tough week for Tom Brady, so I would not play Tom Brady. But Jim, what about you?
All right, my gold. I'm not going low-hanging fruit this week. I already kind of jumped ahead for him in the beginning. It was Tyler Huntley with the Steelers. Like I said, he's a particular good quarterback matchup for Tyler Huntley. I understand he had the INT, had a couple sacks last week. It was an ugly win, but it still was a win. Showed that he had little change of the game plans. Showed he can run TDs, he can run the offense, he can complete long drives, and he can do it when it matters most. Now, the Steelers have either been torn apart in the air by good quarterbacks, or they've been chewed in the ground by good running backs. And with a guy that's kind of good at both, I see opportunities arising for him somewhere eventually. So he's going to be the guy that I am throwing in there with Lamar Jackson being out as my gold QB to finish in the top 12. You know, an unlikely QB to finish in the top 12. That's the guy I want to give you. My fool's gold, Deshaun Watson. Listen, if you waited the 12 weeks to start him, whew, Jesus.
That hurt.
Got the win, but he definitely cost you a win in the fantasy. In fantasy, if he was your quarterback putting up there. It gets no better for him going up against the division rival Cincinnati Bengals, where the Bengals are a top unit against a QB in terms of fantasy, never allowing a QB to go over 300 yards. The Dolphins did combine with the Tua and Teddy combined, and they rarely allow for 250. Ironically enough, it was the Jacoby Brissett led Browns that smacked the Bengals and had a pretty good fantasy outing in terms of the numbers, where he was QB 10 on the week. But as we all saw, there's a little bit of rust on Deshaun Watson there. Obviously so, right? He hasn't played a game in forever. Not going to get into why. I still don't see this being the game where he gets all his P's and Q's, T's crossed, the I's dotted. He's going to run into a bit of a buzzsaw. So that's my full goal for that.
I like it. Let's move into the running back position. I got Donta Foreman up against Seattle. Foreman has been a top 24 RB in 50% of the games as the lead RB in Carolina. He also has 23 red zone rushes in 6 games and 100 yards in 4 of those games. Seattle has allowed at least 12 points to all but 2 running backs this season, and 6 have gone for over 20 points. They're allowing 40% more points than the league average over the last 5 weeks and 23% more all season. this just feels like a really juicy matchup for Donta Foreman. When you look at it, he's splitting near 50-50 with Chuba Hubbard, but he's getting a lot more valuable touches and he's getting a lot more opportunity to touch the football than Chuba Hubbard. Fool's gold. I got James Conner this week against the New England Patriots. The Pats are the second best against fantasy running backs, only allowing 2 to go over 15 points all season. Both had either a touchdown through the air or more than 5 receptions. Connor has been a top 24 RB all 4 weeks since coming back from his injury. He's only had 4 receptions 2 times this season. He's also just had his first game going over 90 total yards from scrimmage. He's relied on a healthy dose of touchdowns the last 3 weeks. 4 of them to be exact. The Pats have allowed 3 total touchdowns to RBs all season. So getting a touchdown for James Conner is going to be difficult. Getting the receptions necessary to get to the proper pointage is going to be difficult. I think all around it is going to be a very difficult night for James Conner, and that's why I have him settled in as my fool's gold up against a very strong New England Patriots pat rush defense. Oh, Jim is back just in time. Perfect timing, Jim. I just wrapped up talking about James Conner and why you shouldn't play him. So gold for you at the running back position. I see one is low hanging, one might not be.
Well, it's Joe Mixon / Samaje Perine, depending on, who is the lead back in Cincy with, Perine filling in the last 2 weeks. With Mixon with the conky, not sure if he's actually going to be playing, but if he does play, but Perine filled in nicely coming off the monster game. Might be low-hanging fruit, but I'm taking this one. Gave you Huntley last, not low-hanging, but the Browns are a weak team when even Rachaad White and Dameon Pierce in the last 2 weeks have been able to break long runs and put up decent numbers against them. Something these two can definitely do, especially because the QBs and the wide receiver that these two have are way better than what Dameon Pierce had. And even what Rachaad White had, considering like what Tom Brady has been. So they can open up the boxes and keep the defenses honest. So I understand if Mixon ends up playing, like people are going to end up playing him, but temper expectations, I guess, with Perine if Mixon plays, but that's why I got him as the mix there. My fool is going to be Ramondre Stevenson. I know this seems kind of weird. Maybe this on paper seems like a pretty good game coming into things against the Arizona Cardinals defense, but something just doesn't feel right to me. Maybe it's I don't know if it's the fact of seeing Mac Jones scream on the sidelines, throw the fucking ball because our run game fucking sucks. Or maybe it's the fact that Damian Harris being out and Ramondre is just a little bit of a lackluster game from what you really expected of him coming in last week. Gave me a little bit of a bitter taste, but this seems like a trap game to me. Seems like a game where you just got to avoid it. I also realize, though, that these are situations where a lot of us are forced the hands that we are dealt due to injuries, and you have to play these guys, whether in your true running back spot or your flex spot. But if you can't help it, these are guys that I am definitely trying to avoid. So for me, it's Ramondre Stevenson this week.
I like it. Wide receiver, gold for me. I got the duo in Jacksonville because I think you can play both of them comfortably. Christian Kirk and Zay Jones up against Tennessee. Only 2 teams are allowing 40-plus points to the fantasy wide receiver position so far this season, Tennessee being one of them. Tennessee has allowed 4 20-plus point wide receivers in the last 3 weeks alone and 8 total on the season. Plus, in 8 games, at least 2 wide receivers have managed 11-plus points together. So a second wide receiver has proven a very viable flex option up against Tennessee Titans, while a number 1 has gone off to be probably a top 12 or fringe top 12 wide receiver. Kirk is a wide receiver 14 in points per game and seeing over 8 targets per game. Zay Jones is quietly the wide receiver 35 in points per game and is also seeing just shy of 8 targets per game. And in 5 of 11 games, he's managed to go for 10 plus points. Am I worried about the injury to Trevor Lawrence? No. Apparently, post game, he was not in a boot. He was walking fine, no limp. So far, I've heard nothing to the contrary that I should worry about that. Fool's gold. I'm starting to feel like a Gabe Davis hater because I think this is the second or third time I've had him in this spot up against the New York Jets. Jets have only allowed 2 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks. Plus, they rank 4th in yards per pass attempt and 4th lowest in yards per pass attempt and 6th lowest in yards per completion. Something we know very well about Gabe Davis. He relies on A, big plays, and B, touchdowns. Both of those, the New York Jets do not give very much up of. Davis is disappointed this season. I say big time. Others will argue because his ADP heading into the season was wide receiver 24, although people were expecting a lot better than wide receiver 24. While he may have been drafted there, the expectations were very much higher. So I say he is disappointed big time this season to the tune of 4 top 24 finishes and a 30th fantasy points per game at the wide receiver position. He's close to his ADP, but there was a lot higher expectations for Gabe Davis. He is my fool's gold for this week. Jim, what do you got at wide receiver?
So the gold, I had to pivot quick once I saw your Jacksonville duo. I was going to pick Christian Kirk there, but I'd pivot to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, again, a little bit low hanging. I
debated him too, though.
Man, again, like, this is the bye week from fucking hell. This is another thing you gotta really go with. If you're not getting hit with injuries, you're probably getting hit with buys. And the fact that you can get by with Amon-Ra right now, if you got him, is fantastic. Let's be honest, gets peppered with targets. I understand it is very low hanging fruit. My avoid this week as well was Gabe Davis, to be honest with you, because, well, leaves a sour taste in my mouth when the motherfucker only puts up 5 points for you and puts 3 catches? What do you have? 3 catches on like 9 targets or something? Like, it was brutal. It was not the type of Gabe Davis performance that I've grown accustomed to.
I believe you've been forewarned in back-to-back off-season AFC East previews from me. It's Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, or an absolute bust.
Yeah, well, in a lot of leagues, you have to sometimes play like 3 wide receivers, or you got a few flex options in there. And like I said, you get hit with buys, you get hit with injuries, and you got to play these motherfuckers. But yeah, he's definitely the avoid.
Gabe Davis should never have been drafted anywhere close to your second wide receiver. Just saying. But I digress. Let's move into
the 3 wide receivers, you jackass. 3 wide receivers.
Oh, well, let's move into tight ends, where I know Jim doesn't have one because he doesn't care about them. I don't care about them either, but I'm going to give you a couple because, like you said, it's a bye week from hell. There's a lot of injuries. Everything's piling up on you. You want to squeak into that playoff spot, or if you're not in it, or if you're in it, you want to try and get that bye. Gold for me. He let me down a couple weeks ago, but I'm going there again. Foster Moreau with the against the Los Angeles Rams. There is a chance that Renfro and Waller could be activated. I don't think they're going to be activated on week where they're playing on a Thursday. I think they'll be activated. The window will be open this week for them to practice, and they will return in future dates. But despite this, Moreau has been streaky. He's gotten hit back and forth the last few games from a top 12 perspective. Moreau gets a matchup against a team who over the last 3 weeks have allowed 23 points per game to the position, including tight ends in 3 straight. 5 of the last 6 tight ends even have managed 12 plus points. So I think this is a very juicy matchup for Foster Moreau, and barring a surprise comeback from Darren Waller. And if Darren Waller's back, I would probably play Darren Waller, although I'd probably lean towards Moreau because I don't know if I'd be comfortable with Waller yet. Haven't been able to be comfortable with Waller at all anyways this season. Fool's Gold kind of alluded to it a little earlier. I got Kate Otten up against San Francisco. Same, the stack with Tom Brady as my Fool's Gold quarterback. 49ers are my favorite team to choose not to start your tight end against. Pitts, Kelsey, and Higbee of early season greatness are the only 3 tight ends to manage 10 plus points against them. No other tight end has even eclipsed 5. Otten has been up and down, including being the tight end 1 this past week with 14.8 points. That is absolutely disgusting to say. 14.8 points got you the tight end 1. 4 times he has been the top 12 tight end. I do not see a repeat or anything close to that happening up against his very strong San Francisco 49ers defense. So I got Kate on at Fool's Gold. I got Foster Moreau at Gold. Jim, anything you want to add on the tight end front before we move on to saying goodbye to these wonderful people?
No, no, man. Tight end is a really tricky pace. It's really hard to navigate throughout the year. Like we've always said, a guy usually ends up popping up that goes top 12 that goes undrafted. This year is probably Gerald Everett.
Hayden Hurst was pretty close. We talked about probably 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah. Anyway, it's pretty rough. So, like I said, or you punted it. So, like, you either go early with my man Travis Kelsey, who everybody on shit on, or you end up punting it and you end up getting some diamonds in the rough, like Hayden Hurst this year. But right now, obviously, you're fucked.
I just want to point this out because I think this is absolutely amazing. Travis Kelsey is the tight end 1, no surprise here. 246 points. Mark Andrews is the tight end 2, nearly 100 points behind Travis Kelsey at 154.2. Not a surprise to the Gold Jacket podcast, but probably a surprise to a plethora of analysts who felt the fall off for Travis Kelsey was happening.
Well, I know there's at least one league I'm in where the top 3 people it's Pat Mahomes, then it's another quarterback, then it's Travis Kelsey. And then it's the rest. And I said, holy shit.
When I look at tight end, it's Kelsey 240. If you're playing PPR, it is Kelsey 246.3, Mark Andrews 154.2, TJ Hawkinson 144. Then it's Pat Freiermuth at 115. And then from Pat Freiermuth at 115 all the way down to, let's call it tight end 16, Tyler Higbee, 94.4. So they're separated by about 21-ish total points between the tight end 4 and the tight end 16. So, unfortunately, for the people who did not tune into the Gold Jacket podcast, you did not realize that fall off with Travis Kelsey is not happening now. I think, what did we give him, Jim? I think 3 years? 3 years? 3 years? Minimum 3 more years that he was going to be elite tight end option.
This year,
and I
next
get it,
year,
some
one
tight end
more,
injuries have happened, so I get it when I'm talking about tight ends. I get it.
Yeah, but still, 100 points higher than at least the consensus tight end 5.
And he would average 20.5. Next down, Andrews 14.
Oh, 14.
Yeah.
Fucking brutal.
Crazy.
Like I said, like Andrews was like between the 3 to 5, depending on preference on people's drafting. So it's not like it's absurd even with the injuries that he's number 1. He's 100 points ahead of Andrews, who people had at 3, 4, or 5. It's not that ridiculous that he would probably be like, 40, 50 points maybe if Kyle Pitts was the guy that they think he was supposed to be, if George Kittle wasn't injured all the time. Like, I don't know, man.
Absolutely. This is a great episode, but we do have to accept our misses, and we do have some misses. I did not think AJ Brown was going to be as good as he was. I knew he'd be good. I did not think he'd be the wide receiver 5. I also was on the record for saying I did not believe that the Dolphins would have 2 top 24, let alone 2 top 12 wide receivers. At
No,
this
neither did
present
I.
moment, Tyreek Hill is 3, Jalen Waddle is 9. We have some misses.
Oh,
We also
yeah.
have some hits. We'll take our losses and take them where we've had them.
We
But
were
thank you
all
so
for Tyreek Hill being a top wide receiver.
We were all for Tyreek Hill. We were
We just
100%
weren't
on
for
board for
Jalen
a top
Waddle
5
being-
finish.
We were not for Waddle finishing anywhere near the 24.
But go
Maybe
back. I do want to say go back and look at Waddle. I do think
He does
like
the same things as
50%, but I think like
Tyreek Hill
50% of his
previous to this year.
50% of his output this year, or very close to, is in like 3 or 4 games.
Well, the Amari
So-
Cooper effect.
Except better. I feel
Yeah.
like Amari Cooper never did finish top 12 for you, but he finished top 24 for you. You just didn't know what game to play him. But Waddle, you're probably playing him every week because he does at least prove decent in a pinch for a flex option. So thank you
Yeah, he's
everybody
definitely
for thank you everybody for stopping in, for listening, supporting us. Make sure you rate, review, like, subscribe wherever you're listening or watching with whether our podcast form, which Jim will hopefully post either tomorrow or Thursday for your listening, or make sure you hit that thumbs up on YouTube with the Undroppables, or subscribe to the Undroppables as well. Follow Jim at Goldjacket QBs. Follow myself at Connor10. That's TEN, not the number 10. Follow the Undroppables crew. We shouted them out at the beginning of the show. The Undroppables on YouTube, at the Undroppables on Twitter. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. We are going to see you next Tuesday, and we are going to prep you for your playoff push and to bring home that bag.
This is a beginning point. This is the beginning of the rest of my life. I got the meaning, and I got to write it down because I don't want to forget it.